It's really my pleasure to be online with everybody this morning to tell you a bit about my world. And my world is really about empowering clean energy in terms of creating a clean, sustainable energy transition. So as a reservoir engineer, I have a bit of an unnatural obsession with what happens in rocks that are underground. So on screen right now, I've got an image of what's called a geothermal reservoir. And New Zealand is blessed with many geothermal reservoirs, which are sites where water from the surface, like rainwater, permeates down into the underground and it gets heated. It gets heated very, very hot. So the water that I help companies go after may be as hot as 300 degrees Celsius. So that superheated water may be in the form of water or it may be in the form of superheated steam, and it is trapped underground inside of rock. And the rocks we're looking for are special kinds of rocks that have what's called porosity and permeability. They have small gaps in them, small pores, networks of fracture that allow these hot fluids to permeate and flow through the rock. So you see on screen, I have arrows there for where this hot water is just circulating around inside the rock. So I literally kind of have rocks in my head. I try to create a vision of what is underground. Where are these rocks with these hot fluids? How fast will the fluids move? How easily can I access them? How many wells would a company need to drill? How much fluid could be produced from those wells? Is it a sustainable operation? So that search for these underground resources, whether it's geothermal energy or what I used to do more of in oil and gas, is a process that uses a lot of STEM skills, a lot of mathematics and a lot of computing. So yeah, I have rocks in my head. So a little bit about me. I am professionally a reservoir engineer. My day job, as I call it, is as Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Engineering at the University of Auckland. I'm also privileged to be the Deputy President of Engineering New Zealand. So in my work with the university, I have a wonderful smorgasbord of opportunities in terms of the things I get to do in a day. No 2 days are ever the same. My days involve typically some teaching, which could be anything from first year engineering students who are 18 to groups of working professionals. It involves research in terms of working personally and with a bigger team to find new ways to access clean energy resources. And it involves often consulting, where I'm working as a problem solver directly with companies and government agencies. Now, you're probably wondering in a talk on clean energy, why I have a zebra on screen right now. So the zebra is sort of inspired by the project on my desk right now. So at the moment, I'm working with the New Zealand government, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in their New Zealand Aid program, where we're saying we're really, really good at clean energy in New Zealand. 85% of New Zealand's electricity is renewable. 40% of our overall energy is renewable. So we are one of the world leaders in clean energy, and we want to export that expertise and help other countries do that. So the zebra is a shot from my last trip to Africa, where me and my team are supporting a range of African countries. We work with a consortium of about 12 African countries to bring up their geothermal industry and to produce geothermal in that country. So the last couple of weeks, I've been working on a new proposal to do some more work in Africa. When I'm in Africa, you literally do get caught in traffic jams, sometimes of cars, but sometimes of zebras and giraffes and other things. Unfortunately, with COVID, my next trip to Africa will need to be a virtual one. So how did I get to have this kind of wonderful life? Well, I grew up in New Plymouth, and I have taken my high school education in New Plymouth through to a university education at the University of Auckland. and out to the world. So the top picture on screen right now is me graduating from Stanford University in California, which was truly wonderful. There's a shot, just one page of my passport in the bottom to reflect the sort of global existence that I have, or back in the days when I used to fly. And the shot in the middle is from an app on my computer where I keep track of everywhere I've been. And I think now I've traveled to probably over 50 countries, more like 55. My team and I delivered training on clean energy to people from at least 20 countries just last year. So what I love about the work I do is the impact it makes in the world. We really can try and make a difference in the energy sector and in carbon emissions globally by empowering others to bring clean energy into their countries. But making that impact really does require communication. I get to talk to all sorts of interesting people, anywhere from school students to diplomats. So you really do have to be able to think about how you talk about what STEM means, what it can do. And I was asked to mention any kind of life lessons that working in STEM has taught me. And I think the life lesson I choose would be one of resilience. We all know that if you're doing math, sometimes, you know when you've got it wrong, the numbers don't quite add up. So you have to learn to be resilient and to really persist with it. But I find it immensely satisfying when my mathematical equations work out, my computer code works. So more specifically, some of the skills that I use every day is writing computer code. And if you wanted to study in this space, we don't assume that you've learned to code at high school. Great if you can, or if you taught yourself online, you can do that these days, but don't feel at all shut out if you can't. I used to teach first year programming, and all I would assume is that you could turn on a computer and run a web browser well enough to figure out what lecture theatre the class was in. If you can do that much, I can teach you to code, I guarantee it. And why code is important for me is because I use it as a tool to do mathematics. I use a lot of equations. So most of you might write down a mathematical statement as a single equation. As you get through high school a bit more, you might do what's called simultaneous equations, solving 2 equations at once, 3 equations at once. The same sorts of tools can be used to solve a lot of equations. So a good day at the office for me, I get to solve 1 million equations before breakfast. Not sure I did that yet this morning, so maybe it's not a good day, but that's okay. But the key is I can't solve 1 million equations at once on a piece of paper. I don't have enough paper in my office to do that, let alone enough time. So I teach a computer how to do it. It does all the kind of boring bits. I work a lot with earth scientists, geologists, geophysics, geochemistry, people who really understand the earth, and I work in big teams. And I do a lot of writing and a lot of presentation. But probably one really important skill that I haven't put on the list references the image in the bottom. So the image in the bottom is a tourist site in a protected geothermal area. It's a hot spring. And geothermal is a culturally important resource in New Zealand. It's a taonga for our Māori communities. So Māori values are very important in the work I do, that the work I do uses maths and computing to predict the future. I want to predict, are these geothermal systems going to produce energy, which we can turn into electricity, not just now or next week, but will it last 100 years into the future? Will there be geothermal energy for your grandchildren? And that kind of value is a very important sort of cultural overprint of working with Māori communities in this sector. So in terms of things I wish I knew before I got into STEM, I think I really wish I had understood when I was at school more of the impact STEM could make. I think a lot of the teaching you get in class, for various reasons, focuses on the toolbox of skills. Here's the trigonometry equations you need. Here's Faraday's law in physics, or whatever it may be. You are taught a set of fundamental skills, which you absolutely need. I would never say you don't. But what is sometimes missing is a linkage between understanding those skills and the impact that you can make with them. So here I've grabbed an image of the school strike for climate change, reflecting the fact that I know young people want to make a difference in the world. I know young people want a cleaner planet, a planet that has less CO2 emissions. So for me, a pathway through STEM, in my case through an engineering career, is a pathway to make impact in that space, to take fundamental knowledge of maths and science, to do something that really helps us understand the world, and to communicate that impact to a really diverse range of people. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to everyone. I think there are some questions that have come in, so I'm very, very happy to take questions from the audience.
There are a couple there. Rosalind, can you see those too?
If I go over to Q&A, it looks like yes. I can. Yes. So a couple of questions. What other types of clean energy do you think will be around in the future? Great question. I think the ones we have to watch with great interest are solar. So I'm lucky enough to have solar panels on my house, but currently there are still some barriers to solar because the cost of buying the panels isn't affordable for everybody. I'm lucky enough I could write the check, but solar is getting cheaper and cheaper and more affordable. So we will see a lot of solar. There's a lot of work done through kind of chemical engineering approaches to access hydrogen as a fuel. And that plays into New Zealand having a lot of extra electricity. So for instance, if the Tiwai Point aluminium smelter in the South Island stops running, and that's a bit of a political football at the moment, so I won't go there, but one day it will. We will have the capability to generate more electricity than we need. So we could use electricity to turn water into hydrogen, and then the hydrogen becomes a clean fuel that could run vehicles. And how have I found being a female engineer in the industry? I've had a blast. I personally have not experienced any significant issues around being female. In many ways, I think being a woman does help you get noticed, and ideally get noticed for the right reasons. So it also, often women do well stereotypically in terms of communication and teamwork and some of the broader kind of what we call soft skills that help you have a more well-rounded career in the space. But the numbers of women in engineering are growing all the time. And what's also really important to me is the awareness of men in the industry is also growing. And there are now huge numbers of men who are very, very supportive of women potentially wanting to have careers that are a little more flexible around juggling work and family commitments, for example, and being real advocates for women. So that is really how we get to make a difference. So thank you for that question.